Hi, my name's Harold Gutmann. I cover North Carolina for the Durham Herald-Sun. I'm here with my colleague Steve Wiseman, who covers Duke, and welcome to Our Game, where we talk about our game in the state of North Carolina, which is, of course, college basketball. A big game to get to on Thursday night, the Duke-Carolina rivalry. My ears just stopped ringing from the Smith Center, so it's a good time to... Yeah, we can hear each other. It's a good time to talk about it. So let's get right to it. You know, Duke is a team that highest scoring team in the ACC, best shooting team in the ACC, kind of hangs their head on offense. They had a really bad shooting slump in the second half that kind of let Carolina get back into it. What happened there?
Yeah, you know, Carolina mixed in the man with the zone defense in the second half, and it really seemed to perplex Duke. You know, they weren't able to move the ball as well as they did in the first half when they shot 50% and kind of built that lead up. And you know, they shot very poorly from three-point, 5 out of 22, which is abnormal for them. But the second time in 3 games they've done that. Duke relies on a three-point shot. That's a big part of their offense, and when they're not hitting, they're not hitting. But they also missed some shots inside, some bunny shots that normally Jabari Parker and Emil Jefferson will hit. And it also hurt that Rodney Hood was in foul trouble. He said it kind of made him play a little more passive, especially on defense. But Carolina did a great job of taking control of that game and taking the momentum and pushing it down the court and exploiting Duke's defense. Duke was never able to kind of have that fight they have in other games, and snowballing them, they could never turn it around.
Yeah, you know, and UNC coach Roy Williams was pretty honest after the game. He said, you know, we needed Duke to miss some shots, and they did. Like you mentioned, the 5 of 22 from behind the arc. I mean, a lot of them were contested, but some of them were open, and Duke just, like you said, just didn't hit them. You know, from a UNC perspective, I think they have to feel good about the Leslie McDonald's performance. You know, the last couple games, it's been a different player each game. Against Pittsburgh, you know, James Michael McAdoo with 24 points, 12 rebounds. Against Florida State, Kennedy Meeks made 11 straight shots, had the career-high 23 points. And then on Thursday night against Duke, it was Leslie McDonald who made a three-pointer in the game's opening possession and finished 9 of 12, 21 points. You know, it's kind of, I don't want to make too much about this feel-good story of Leslie McDonald because a lot of his the adversity that he overcame was kind of self-imposed with the NCAA violations. You know, I'm not a big fan of some of the rules, but the fact is, you know, he was aware of the rules at the time, and it wasn't like, you know, he needed a winter coat because he was cold, or, you know, he needed to feed his family. You know, these were high-end luxury rental cars that he was driving. So again, I don't want to make too much of it, but the fact is he did miss 9 games to start the season, which kind of set him back. And then, you know, this guy makes his living on shooting. He was incredibly inconsistent all season, except for the last 4 games where he was consistently bad shooting, you know, with 8 of 31 from the field. But, you know, like I said, he hit the opening 3, and then to his credit, he didn't settle for threes. You know, that was the only three-pointer he made all game, but he drove the mid-range. He hit the go-ahead shot with a couple minutes left that gave Carolina a lead to stay, which kind of a mid-range shot. He was, like I said, he was aggressive for the basket. And he did a great job defending Rashid Suleiman as well. So just great all-around game for a senior playing Duke at home for the last time. And you could see how much it meant to the fans, to the students who rushed the court. And, you know, if I was going to tell you before the year started that they weren't going to have P.J. Harrison, probably the best player, and they were going to beat, you know, the top 4 teams in the preseason rankings in Duke, Louisville, Michigan State, Kentucky, you know, you'd wonder how that happened. And I think that's part of the reason there was so much emotion from the team, from the players, from everyone after they beat Duke on Thursday night. Now, looking ahead to Saturday, we don't have to look too far ahead. It's coming up real quick. You know, Coach K said after the game, you know, the team was missing whatever it was. Well, they don't have much time to find it with Syracuse coming in on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Carolina's fans should have a lot of emotion and passion. That was an incredible win, and they're really rolling at the right time. Duke, on the other hand, kind of reverted to some things they did earlier this year against Notre Dame and Clemson, where they had a 10, 9, 11-point lead in the second half and then lost their fight for some reason, their passion on the road, and weren't able to pull out a win when it was in good shape to get it. Yeah. And the Syracuse game was an example where they did have that because the game up in the Carrier Dome, they got behind in the second half, and just when it looked like Syracuse was going to roll them and win by 10 or 15, Duke came back and tied it with 3-pointers from Tyler Thornton, and Suleiman hit the one at the gun, and they went to overtime and pushed them as far as you could go before losing. So they're going to have to find that passion again. There was a lot of talk about that in the locker room after the game in Chapel Hill from the leadership, Hood and Tyler Thornton, that they've got to find that again, and you know, I think they will when Syracuse comes to Cameron. It's going to be a whole different atmosphere for Duke, and but they're going to have to be able to secure this to keep it for when they're on the road going into the NCAA tournament next month.
Yeah, you know, for UNC, they got Wake coming up on Saturday. Quick turnaround again. Actually, the quickest turnaround, 9 p.m. Thursday to noon Saturday. You know, Wake obviously struggled this year, although they did beat North Carolina in Winston-Salem. I know they're a different team at Winston-Salem, but that should probably stick with UNC if they're not overlooking Wake Forest, the fact that they lost to them in actually the first game in the ACC schedule. And you know, the key there is just, you know, keep up the intensity, keep up the, you know, the focus, that sense of urgency they talk about. You know, you'd have to be a little concerned about the minutes for Marcus Page. He's played 37 Thursday night. He's been playing 37, 38 most of these games, and now it's their 4th game in 8 days. You wonder if it starts to affect him at all. Certainly, he seems to get stronger as the game goes on. He had a scoreless first half against Duke and then scored 13 in the second half. He's been doing that a lot this year. So that should make you feel good that he's not feeling the minutes. He's actually gets stronger as the game goes on. But you wonder if it'll ever catch up to him. But like I said, as long as they keep that sense of urgency, that focus, you'd think they'd be okay on Saturday against Wake Forest. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll be there to talk about all the big games next week on Our Game.